Now on One, a new series of Inside Out with David Whiteley. And the snow has brought some changes to the advertised programme.
Hello, it's great to be back. Welcome to a very wintry Weybread in Suffolk. This is what's coming up on tonight's programme. The ultimate metal detectors looking for treasure from America.
Ammo box. That's quite nice. It's got a writing on it, look.
Like many parts of eastern England, there used to be lots of airfields near here. It's hard to imagine just how much machinery there would have been here 70 years ago. Back in the autumn, I joined a group of people to discover what was and still is buried right here under the ground. This team is digging for treasure, but not gold and silver. They're looking for the legendary sites, which are said to contain treasure from our recent history.
It's a World War II Coca-Cola bottle, made in Montgomery, Alabama.
That bottle has been in the ground for decades. In the 1940s, there was an invasion in East Anglia, but not from the enemy. The invasion was, of course, friendly. From our new allies in the Second World War, the Americans. They came to set up air bases and carry out bombing raids in Germany. The people here are passionate about anything to do with the history of the Second World War. This is a special reenactment day at Rougham Airfield in Suffolk, and most of the vehicles and the uniforms are original. And we're going to be meeting a team who literally dig these things up. Simon Dunham is fanatical about anything from the Second World War. He takes along his genuine US Jeep to these reenactment days. But this is just the tip of the iceberg. Back home, Simon's house is like a museum dedicated to World War II.
With the arrival of the Americans here in 1942, every 5 miles there was an American heavy bomber base or fighter base.
And what kind of things have you found in the past?
Aircraft engines, propellers, undercarriage legs. I mean, you know, every part of an aircraft, you know, that you can possibly think of, we have found. It's our heritage. Never again are you going to see the skies black with 1,000 bombers. You know, never again will you see an American town every 5 miles with 3,500 personnel there. You know, it's very, very important that we preserve this era of history.
Simon's been digging up planes for years, but now he's moving on to something much bigger. At the end of the war, when the Americans left Britain, they didn't bother taking their equipment home. They buried it.
Well, these are all aerial shots of the dumps in 1946, post-war, when the Americans are gone. It just illustrates, you know, the kind of stuff that they've left behind.
What are we looking at here? What are all these down the side?
These are all stacks of aircraft parts, all segregated parts. You've got an area there with probably aircraft engines stacked up there. It's undercarriage and elevators by the looks of it on there. You've probably got an area here for armaments.
Why did the Americans leave everything here? Why did they bury it?
You couldn't possibly have taken it all back with you. You had hundreds and thousands of tons of gear. There's no way you could ever take it back.
So it's been left under the ground?
Bulldozed into a hole and filled up and forgotten about.
Until now?
Until now.
It's thought this field is one of those legendary sites. Now, Simon reckons they could have buried anything here, from tins of Spam to whole army vehicles, things like jeeps, personnel carriers, even bits of plane. Now, Simon's desperate to see what's under the soil, but he insists on doing things properly. So today, he's been joined by Malcolm Weale. He's an expert in geophysical surveys. And the equipment they're using is kind of like the ultimate metal detector. If there's metal here, they'll find it.
We're picking up really large ferrous objects, a great big concentration of buried metal here. So, you know, Simon's right in saying, you know, we've just come to the edge of it. You hear that machine has gone quiet. So when we can start to build a picture of it in the next survey line. What we do, it's all downloaded in here on a little memory stick. We go back to the office, we download it onto the computer, and then we can see it. For the first time since it was buried here, we can actually see something.
If we look at the 1946 aerial shot of this and we overlay it on here now, you'll see the areas where the burial sites are.
Look at that.
See?
There's just an absolute mass of buried ferrous metal. You know,
concentration of metal there.
And it matches exactly the shape of the dump site that we've seen on the aerial photograph. So that means that the pit is untouched. It's still full. You know, what we're looking for is still there.
the day of the big dig in Weybridge. Simon and his team have got permission from the farmer to see what may lie beneath the soil. It's time to find out if the geophysical data is right. It's the moment of truth.
Oh! Look at that. Wow. G1.
So what is this?
Well, this will be like a pilot's airspeed computer. And if you look, it's all got the graduations on. It's just like a slide rule. That's B-17 window, isn't it? Wow. Yep, B-17 window. This is potentially where you could find a whole aircraft engine dump, looking at this kind of stuff that's coming out now.
And the smells are given away as well.
It is. Great.
Yeah. So what is this?
That's one of the primary breathing oxygen bulbs that was charged up prior to a mission, and this is what the crew would have fed from, their oxygen, at 25,000 feet.
Now, the team hasn't found any whole vehicles yet, but what they have found is loads of these pieces of metal, pieces of aircraft. That doesn't look like much, but behind these is some real history. It looks like we just got two pieces of twisted metal.
You have, in a sense, but what you've actually got are the aircraft serial numbers, and these bits of twisted metal will unlock a piece of history for us now. I've got a document at home called the cumulative loss listing, which gives every aircraft that they lost. It will give the starting point to find out, and then what we can look for is accident report or combat report that will tell us what happened to this aircraft.
It's the end of the first day of the dig, and it's been pretty successful. On day 2, the team move along to another part of the dump site.
Really early on and really close to the surface, the diggers making that scraping sound as it hits metal, so they've definitely found something here.
It looks like a GI issue gas mask.
Look at that.
Meanwhile, Ian's come back with some news about the serial number that was found the day before.
We've now identified it as an aircraft from the 96 Bomb Group at Snetterton Heath. It was from the 339 Squadron of that, and the aircraft actually flew back to the States, but then we've looked at the group records and we know that there was a fire on board an aircraft on the base around that time that caused slight damage.
So basically there was a fire, they cut the bits off, chucked them in the pit.
Yeah, that's very likely. The aircraft had some sort of damage, they replaced those parts, discarded those, they end up in the pit here. Years later we come along and we found bits of, obviously, a genuine, properly identified wartime B-17 Flying Fortress.
Who last wore this? Well, they've just found, look, GI's helmet. Probably going to mess my hair up, but perfect fit.
It's exceeded all of my expectations, and I think everybody else's here today. There are no Jeeps here, you know. There are, you know, substantial aircraft parts that have been buried from wherever they've come from crash sites, from stores, from hangars, from wherever.
And what happens to all this stuff now? Where does it end up?
Ultimately, we'll make some of it available to people who are still flying aircraft like the B-17. We've got the Sally B, which is based at Duxford, and I'm sure that they could make use of some of this kit that we've got here to keep her airborne. The rest of it will be distributed to other museums who are interested. This is just the beginning. No, this is just the beginning. I mean, you know, if we can find this kind of stuff at every dump site, it will be fantastic.
So you'll keep going?
We'll keep digging.